As food security becomes increasingly pressing concern due to conflicts around the world, there is a need for the UK to produce more food, which requires building an energy infrastructure that delivers the cheapest energy possible. Food security. So food security in the UK is a really interesting subject that I've just started researching. Now, 71% of all land is used for farming. 19% of that land is used for arable crops, like wheat and barley. The farming industry creates 400,000 farming jobs every year. Only 1% of horticulture is fruit and veg. And the farming industry contributes 10.7 billion to the UK economy every year. The UK exports about 18 billion pounds worth of food and drink every year. Food is global business. The UK exports to over 200 countries and territories. Our biggest export markets are Ireland, France, and the USA. The EU, which equates to 9.3 billion a year, and all the other countries, all the non-EU countries, equates to 4.3 billion a year. The UK produced 3.5 billion in cereal, 1.2 billion in vegetables, 700 million in potatoes, 700 million in rapeseed oil. We did 600 million in fruit. We did 2.6 billion in beef and veal, 2.3 billion in poultry, 1.3 billion in pork, and 1.1 billion in mutton and lamb. Dairy industry brought in 4.6 billion. These are big numbers. And the UK is a very skilled agricultural country. The UK has 73 protected regional traditional British foods. Cornish pasties, Kentish ale, Jersey Royal potatoes, Stilton cheese, Cumberland sausages, and the list goes on. We export huge quantities of whiskey and salmon and cheese and lamb and various other highly processed products like milk powder and truffles, oysters, natural honey, beer, cider, gin, and the list goes on. The UK has the capability to grow more food than it currently does, and we have an opportunity to do better. Now, the UK supplies 58% of its own food, which means 42% of our food is imported. 23% of our food comes from the EU, and the rest comes from North America, Asia, and Africa, essentially. The three largest commodities that we import is fruit and vegetables, meat and beverages. Yet, we have a massive import shortfall. Apart from beverages, everything else is in deficit. We import a majority of our fruit and vegetables, we import a majority of our meat, we import a majority of our cereals, we import a majority of our tea, coffee, and cocoa, we import our own fish, we import our own dairy and eggs, we import animal feed, we import oils, we import sugars. The UK is very dependent on the international market, and this is an important factor that we have to realize, that a strong country, a strong UK, is able to afford food from other countries. A weak UK is not able to afford food from these international countries, and we need to buy 42% of our food from external sources. Considering we use the smallest amount of land to grow fresh fruit and vegetables, 56% of the fresh vegetables consumed in the UK are produced domestically. However, we can't produce the tropical fruits that we love: bananas, avocados, dates, olives, etc. However, we could produce more of our own tomatoes, cucumbers, and food that we import from the continent if we did a few minor changes to the way the UK economy works. So the origins of fresh fruit is very different to vegetables. In the UK, we only produce 13% of our fruit needs. 26% of it comes from the EU, and 61% of it comes from the rest of the world, which is understandable for our taste for tropical fruits and vegetables. Now, there is a lot of things that we can't, no matter what we do, we can't grow bananas in the UK, and we can't grow avocado pears in the UK. So we'll always import those luxury items. But those are not food security items. And this is the point that I'm trying to focus on here, is food security is not about the luxuries. Food security is about, can we produce enough fresh fruit and vegetables to keep the country healthy? Can we produce enough meat to keep the country healthy? Can we produce enough dairy? And can we produce enough cereals? And can we produce enough grains? And can we produce enough nuts? And all the other things that we need to be healthy, to live balanced lives. And at the moment, we're still not quite there yet. But the problem is, because of globalization, we've never really looked at solving the problem ourselves to make a profit. And there is great opportunities, if we can get our energy infrastructure right, to really revolutionize the growing industry in the UK. You know, we in the UK consume £112 billion a year on food and drink. And 56% of shoppers say they would choose British over foreign produce every time. However, 45% think that British food is more expensive than imported food, and that tends to limit them in their capabilities of purchasing it. What we have to remember is these are very big industries. You know, bread and cereals is like, the UK people alone spend 13.4 billion a year on bread and cereals. You know, we spend 18.7 billion a year on meat. We spend 11.4 billion a year on milk, cheese and eggs, and we spend 7.2 billion a year on fruit and 12.5 billion a year on vegetable. Just for example's sake, for the 12.5 billion a year on vegetable, if we're importing 0.5% of that, that's 6 billion a year going out of the country. So the objective would be is we can grow most vegetables in the right climate controls. We need to make energy cost effective enough so that we can get greenhouses and we can get polytunnels and we can get the agricultural industry geared up, industrialized to grow maximum amount of food. The objective would be to be able to reach 100% of the UK demand plus a 50% to export, grow the economy, create new industries like that. Use the Green Revolution as a springboard to focus on how can we produce and make the world stronger. Food security is one of the most important things we need to be thinking about in this day and age. We have to accept that our economies are built on free trade, and as much trade that we can keep internal, the stronger we are as a country. Now, I'm not saying let's look away from the world. The objective is to create a surplus that we can sell on. We have to become ultra-industrialized in agriculture again. We used to be the powerhouses of the world. What we couldn't grow ourselves, we got from our colonies. And then we brought them home and we added value. And then we sent them back out. But now as the world changes, as climate changes, as the world becomes slightly more unstable, we need to focus on internal, make sure we can produce enough food to keep our nation strong, and at the same time produce more food so we can sell it to the rest of the world, because times are going to get very difficult. In order to remain powerful, we need to come from a place of power. We need to be less, food security is so important, and the UK has huge amounts of food insecurity. Just looking at this map, you can see that, in the northeast, which is my home county, we have between 10 and 11% of households that are food insecure. This should not be happening in the British Isle. This should not be happening in a country that has 71% of its land dedicated to agriculture. We need to focus and double down on creating enough food to make sure that our country can survive and people can eat. That brings me to an end of today's live. And I think it's important we always run down just a quick conclusion of what we've sort of discussed today, and kind of where our thinking is at. So in conclusion, rule by law with small government intervention is potentially the best type of political system. Removing certain institutions from government control will have positive implications for the people and the country. Democracy is not always the best, as we have seen the failures in Scottish independence and Brexit. Decisions like this should not be done in a democratic way. They should be done on a point of the country's need. The UK's Green Revolution is not going to change the world, and it needs to be thought about. The UK Green Revolution is not going to change the world, and we need to think about. And lastly, food. We need to produce more food in the UK. And the only way we can do that, we need to grow more food in the UK. And the only way we can do that is to build an energy infrastructure that delivers the cheapest energy possible. And like everything that I do on this experiment, I'm constantly trying to find ways to make things better, constantly trying to increase my understanding of the way the world is working around me, and trying my hardest not to get bogged down by my own prejudices. It is an incredibly difficult task sometimes, especially when you read something that you're quite passionate about in an area or an industry that you're quite passionate about. But my objective and my absolute goal is to open up conversations with people about these topics who wouldn't normally read the book or take time to think about it. And I'm hoping that through these little YouTube videos that I make, I can reach and connect with people who are also thinking about these things and who also want to make life in their world a better place. And over time, with the right amount of effort, I think we'll get this done. So thank you for watching this video today. Until next time, goodbye.